Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan, and today's episode has a spoiler from the Season 2 finale of The Mandalorian. So I guess we'll wait for you to leave the room, Steve. When Mando Dad bought Baby Yoda to Grey Jedi Ahsoka Tano, we found out that the two aren't really compatible for an apprenticeship. Ahsoka Tano recognizes the attachment Baby Yoda has for Din Djarin, and she's afraid that the little guy will go the Anakin Skywalker route to the dark side. The Baby Yoda also seems to be a bit hesitant to reveal his Force powers, a potential side effect of surviving the horrors of Order 66. Ahsoka would instead suggest that the two go to Tython and use a Seer Stone to summon another Jedi to train Gogurt. And so the real question becomes, who's manufacturing those tiny little Baby Yoda-sized handcuffs, because they are absolutely adorable. Oh yeah, and of course there's that other important thing, who is going to train Baby Yoda now? Now, we initially boiled it down to two likely candidates, and that's Ezra Bridger and Luke Skywalker. Although Luke Skywalker, based on what he was doing at the time, seemed to be a much more likely candidate than Ezra. It also seemed kind of likely that Dave Filoni would bring back Ezra Bridger, a character that he created in Rebels, just like how he brought back Ahsoka, another character he invented in the Clone Wars cartoon. Now, there's also that whole controversy with bringing back a legacy character like Luke Skywalker. You know the fans are going to have mixed reactions no matter what happens. Especially when you're using that creepy deepfake stuff. I mean, maybe because The Mandalorian is a TV show and has a smaller budget than the movies, but Luke looks very CGI and almost borderline video game character-y in this rendition. Even the deepfake Tarkin looked better than this, and that was several years ago in Rogue One. So anyway, Luke Skywalker is not being portrayed by fan favorite Sebastian Stan or the original Mark Hamill. He's just being portrayed by a body double. It's kind of an awesome moment, and it leaves us with a lot more questions than answers in a very usual Star Wars fashion. The biggest question being that if Baby Yoda is now with Master Luke, then where is Baby Yoda in the sequel trilogy? So after the Battle of Endor, Luke's role in the New Republic is greatly diminished. After Emperor Palpatine dies for the first time, along with his fearsome enforcer Darth Vader, there are basically no evil Sith Lords left in the galaxy for a Jedi to fight. And so for the next few years, the New Republic really needs military commanders, politicians, and bureaucrats to wipe out the remaining pockets of Imperial resistance, and then draft some kind of peace treaty, and then start rebuilding the galaxy. The New Republic, bolstered by new recruits, was now waging battles against the Empire at a scale they never had the resources to sustain prior to the Battle of Endor. Luke's services were no longer needed, and soon he began feeling the call of the Force from a planet known as Pilio in the Janata system. Luke travels there and he finds a small group of Imperials on the planet. He befriends one of them, Del Meeko, a member of Inferno Squad, and together they manage to break into one of Emperor Palpatine's observatories. These observatories had two purposes. One, Palpatine used their remote location to peer unobstructed into the unknown region. Palpatine believed that the Sith's past and future lay in this chaotic and hidden region of the galaxy. The second purpose these observatories had was to store hidden artifacts. In the Pilio Observatory, Luke was drawn to a Jedi Star Compass. This was an ancient astrogational tech that functioned in the same way that Kylo Ren's Sith Wayfinder did in the sequels. But instead of leading Luke to Exegol, this compass would direct Luke to Ahch-To, where the first Jedi Temple is located. This would fall in line with basically what Luke Skywalker was doing in the last year of the war, which was to find more information about the ancient Jedi so that he could potentially rebuild it one day. That's kind of what he promised, Yoda after he passed away. Now that Vader, Obi-Wan, and Yoda were all ghosts, Luke didn't really have a mentor anymore, and his desire, at least back then, was to keep the Jedi way of life alive. He would do other things like train his sister Leia in the Force, but ultimately Leia gave up on the lightsaber and would become a politician and help rebuild the galaxy instead, an equally important mission. Luke would also go on another mission to save a Force-sensitive tree that used to be planted at the heart of the Jedi Temple. When the war officially ended in 5 ABY, Luke would sort of disappear in the unknown region. He, along with Lor San Tekka, an explorer and member of the Church of the Force, would travel to the galaxy's most famous Force-related planets, like Morabon, Gatalenta, Ossus, and many other worlds, Ramagan and the Aomia. His ultimate goal was to find the first Jedi Temple on Ahch-To, but he also wanted to look for Exegol and the Sith Wayfinder. Now, this first major trip that Luke would take would last around 10 years, starting from 5 ABY. We know that Luke would encounter Baby Yoda in 9 ABY after hearing his call from the Seeing Stone on Tython. Luke had most likely visited Tython already, or had it on his list of planets to visit because it was considered an important world to the ancient Jedi. Now, what happens after Luke grabs Grogu is unknown for now, and we'll have to wait until next season. The next time we actually see Luke Skywalker in the current canon is 6 years later in 15 ABY. He's taken a break after a decade of searching for artifacts and now has started training the 10-year-old Ben Solo, which would eventually lead to Luke Skywalker establishing his own new school of witchcraft and wizardry. From the limited comics we do see from this era, we don't see any tiny green Baby Yoda amongst the students in Luke's Force School. That doesn't mean that tiny Grogu didn't join Luke's school, but I think it's strange that the little guy isn't mentioned at all. Also, Ben Solo basically ends up killing all of the remaining students anyway, so if Baby Grogu was there, well, it's too painful for me to probably talk about. Let's just save that for 2021. So, why isn't Baby Yoda around in the sequels? Well, although Din Djarin and Grogu mutually agreed to part ways, it's very possible that Grogu will just want to return to Din Djarin and maybe give up his life as a Jedi. Ahsoka Tano, who is probably wiser about the Force and more experienced than Luke, has suggested that the best course of action for someone like Grogu is just simply forget the Force. Luke also has kind of a shaky history as a teacher or a Jedi Master. It's not like he's very successful. He wasn't really able to train his sister, as we mentioned before, but that wasn't really her fault. But he also wasn't able to prevent Ben Solo from going to the dark side, and then, of course, when he did try to finally teach Rey some stuff, she ends up assaulting him. So it wouldn't be surprising if Luke was unable to properly teach Grogu, who at this point is already exhibiting some signs that he doesn't want to be taught at all, and perhaps already has quite a lot of dark side influence. What I predict for early next season is diverging storylines, kind of like what we see in the original trilogy or the sequel trilogy. Dave Filoni definitely understands Star Wars, and he also likes to lean heavily on past tropes and film structures. So you'll have storyline A, where Mando Dad continues to go after the Empire. I'm guessing eventually they'll have to deal with Thrawn, which will be quite a challenge. They'll also have to figure out what they're going to do with, Mandalore. Meanwhile, in story B, you're going to have Luke and Grogu going through their own Dagobah or Ahch-To-like training sequence. By the end of the next season, those two storylines will most likely come back together, because Luke Skywalker versus Thrawn is another classic Star Wars matchup I would like to see, and who knows, maybe Thrawn is back with a few Ysalamiri and has some clone Dark Jedi trying to help him out, just like how things were like in Legends. So while I think it's really cool for Luke Skywalker to reappear in The Mandalorian, it's also kind of a gimmick, I think, mainly because this isn't really Luke Skywalker's story. He's just a cameo in this sense, and because we already know what happens to him in the sequel trilogy, I think that kind of limits how much interaction he's going to have with Grogu in the long run, because we all know that Grogu and Din Djarin belong together, and eventually those two will probably come back. Who knows, maybe Baby Yoda will even, reject the Force. Anyway, guys, let me know in the comment section below what you think about our theory. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. And as usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.